Kagras syndrome is a delusion where a person believes someone they love has been replaced by an identical imposter. Nothing about the loved one has meaningfully changed, they've just become something else, hiding behind a familiar face. As a person who's probably put a few hundred hours into the originals across 3 systems, this feels wrong in an uncanny valley sort of way. The remastered graphics don't quite capture the unique and sometimes hilarious visual identity of the original, and the changes don't quite reach the worst parts of the game: the jittery combat, the punitive world scaling, or the AI. But at least they kept all the crashes and bugs in. The improvements to the leveling system are complicated. Essentially, it feels like they've boosted XP gain and given us the max stat points possible every level. But there are mods that better fix the systems, and they're practically as old as the game itself. Oblivion's level scaling has long been my biggest complaint. The original game absolutely hates your advancement. The quest reward items are all scaled in power according to your level at time of completion, so you can pretty easily lock yourself out of the best equipment by just doing a quest too early. And the enemy scaling is stupid. The reward for adventuring is that combat gets both harder and more tedious, largely because your damage capabilities are determined by your base stats modified by an associated skill. Once you get to the upper level of, say, the blade skill, you're basically forced to only use edged weapons you find, because the equal level blunt weapons are now substantially less effective. And if you pick a class with multiple combat skills, you'll almost definitely end up ignoring one. If you don't focus narrowly, combat will become much harder as all of your weapons gradually transform into wet noodles with each new level. In the beginning, you can effectively use your low-level spells, experiment with different weapons, and so on. But after a few hours, you're locked tight to whatever skill is highest. If you go warrior, expect a lot of stand and deliver one-button click fests. The remastered version cranks up your stat gains, and on the medium difficulties, all those extra points make you indestructible pretty early, and really take the edge out of the combat. The magic and stealth options are better, but not tremendously. Beyond that, the focus on consumable items turns this into a menu game. Sure, we've got 9 hotkeys, but when you have 2 weapons, 15 spells, 30 potions, and 20 scrolls, you're going to be interrupting the action for a good menu look very regularly. Bethesda's games are weird in that they establish a solid baseline of gameplay and then rarely deviate from it in any interesting ways. I was actually really surprised at how much of Oblivion feels like playing a pure dungeon crawler. Something about the design of the dungeons, all right angles with hidden buttons and a single monster slowly approaching as you navigate multiple floors, and the subpar combat. The AI still runs around like a headless chicken, with the majority of escort quests ending when the NPC jumps directly in front of your power attack and, well, loses its head. The juxtaposition of these new high-end textures and the erratic NPC movement and floaty animations is very distracting to me, but I do have a definite mental image of what Oblivion should look like. And the original Oblivion is still entirely playable on PC. I don't really understand why this remaster was made. The controls aren't aged into obscurity because almost every major open-world adventure RPG is based on these controls. And the original Oblivion is still pretty easy to come across, maybe $5 on Steam during a sale. I guess the intent was to make it available on a new generation of consoles for a new generation of gamers. But it just doesn't feel like the Oblivion I know. Maybe the botched faces and too green world are actually a fundamental component of the game's identity. Maybe by fixing the crack in the Liberty Bell, you just end up with a regular bell. I don't know. This game feels like a solution in need of a problem, and I feel pretty stupid for dropping $50 on it. The remaster is doing too much graphically, erasing a good part of the visual identity, and too little mechanically, keeping the game tedious. But I might feel differently if I'd never played Oblivion. That said, the depth and complexity of the lore peeking out here and there in books and dialogue is still astonishing. There's definitely not enough 70s psychedelic sci-fi inspiration in modern gaming. And there are times when I was walking through the lonely roads in deep forests, stumbling on those iconic bone-white Ayleid ruins, where for a moment the thrill of exploration was back. For a moment, I was elated the next generation of gamers would get to experience this on familiar terms. Somewhere there's a 12-year-old spending 50 hours collecting all the gems in the game and stuffing them in a display case, just like I used to do. I don't know if I've outgrown it or just played enough of it. On the trusty pain scale, I have to give this one a very painful. But it's all subjective. A newcomer to the world might not notice anything that I did, at least not on their first playthrough. Once you have a few hundred hours in a game, and you've dabbled in mods, the way you engage with that game fundamentally changes. I'll never see Oblivion with fresh eyes again, and that's okay. Despite finding this particular playthrough a bit lackluster, I do still think Oblivion is generally a very worthwhile game to play. Especially the Shivering Isles expansion. If you like games with lots of exploration, and most importantly, you've got the time to really lose yourself in a setting, grab this remake or the original. Basically, the entire first-person RPG genre is cribbing notes from Oblivion. If it had come out in 2010, they'd probably refer to the entire genre as Oblivion likes. But right now, this was the wrong game for me to pick up. Well, that's all for my 41st review. I really thought I was going to like this one more, but sometimes you stop playing a game because you're done with it, and that feeling can linger for way longer than you expect. Thanks for tuning in. See ya!